Hey guys, how are you? Principles of Management, week number 3. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you guys have been staying warm. We have hit a cold spell in Georgia, and I have been struggling to keep my heater at a temperature that's warm enough that the cold air doesn't, I guess, is making it inefficient. So I've been running my fireplace. I hope you guys have been finding a way to stay warm. Um, I feel better. For those of you who have been wishing me well, I gotten a lot better in regards to my voice. Still, the dry air, I think, is what's causing this sort of like issue with sort of having an issue with speaking and like a dry cough. It's getting a lot better, but still, uh, for those of you who follow the Dunder Mifflin or The Office, this is my office cup that my daughter gave me. Today's coffee was the Sumatra from the Nespresso Sumatra. Was very, very good. Tip of the coffee for today. So let me show you this. Oh, excuse me. So I a couple of years ago decided to try to reduce my sugar intake. Thankfully, I don't deal with any diabetic issues, but I try to avoid sugar. I do consume like a cookie. That's my weak spot. But here's my tip of the day. I've moved from a regular sugar to what would be called monk fruit powder, and it sweetens the coffee enough to take away sort of the bitterness and allow me to drink it and still feel like I have a little bit of sweetness in there. So for those of you who might deal with any of those sugar issues, that might be a little tip for you. So it's helped me. Big fan of The Office. For those of you who are a fan of The Office, guilt. I'm going to give you my guilty pleasure was I've seen it probably about 4 or 5 times in its entirety. Maybe not all at once every time, but love it. One of my favorite episodes. For those of you who have Peacock and want to take a look at it, it's called Scott's Tots, and essentially this manager. For those of you who've not seen it, it's manager Michael Scott. Very, I don't know how to describe him. I guess he's very narcissistic, maybe. He thinks he's the best manager. He gave himself this cup in the show, World's Best Boss. No one gave it to him. He gave it to him. So that's the comedy behind it. And essentially, he promises a classroom in an inner city school in Pennsylvania that if they graduate from high school, he would pay for their college tuition. So he thought he would be rich by the time that they graduate, and I'm not going to give you any more. It's hilarious. Probably one of the most third-hand embarrassment you could feel in watching a show. So encourage you to watch it if you get a chance. That said, talking about business, this week, well, last week we closed off our ethical perspective, and I'm going to read through that this week. As you know, it takes me about a week to go through all the discussions. So I'll be posting those grades throughout the week, so just keep an eye out there for that. Week number 4, by the way, FYI, is your midterm week, so be prepared for that. As I've mentioned before, I don't give a study guide, nor do I give you an opportunity to see what the wrong answers are. And that's done on purpose because, as I mentioned, the questions from your weekly quizzes will be used in your midterm and your final. Therefore, if I gave you the answers, there are some students, as you probably are aware of, that will just go through the test once, get the answers, copy the answers, and then have the answers for the test and the midterm. So I force sort of an obligated way to kind of study a little more, research it a little more, maybe look at it twice if you may. But ultimately, I don't think this is a very difficult class. I think the interaction should be enough for you guys to get some understanding of it. And if you're in this class, then you obviously are hoping to learn about principles of management. So that all said, ethical perspective's gone. I'll be reading your post. Let you know in my personal life, I make decisions, as many of you have alluded to, in different perspectives depending on the information and the situation. There is no right or wrong perspective. It just depends on who you are and the circumstances in which you find yourself in. For my personal preference, just to give you a little insight of me, I would probably lean towards a utilitarian perspective and a deontological perspective. And I might have alluded to this in the past, my parents came to this country in the 70s. My parents came here in a very different time in America where immigration to America was not a heated topic. It wasn't an issue during that time, but they came here technically illegally. But there was what was called a pathway to citizenship, which doesn't exist anymore in America. So in today's society and world, you cannot just go from a third world country, request permission to come to the United States, and be granted that permission. It is unheard of. It's not normal. So therefore, in my parents' time, when you would come here, the United States would almost, I wouldn't say encourage, but allow people to come to this country and start a new life because the times were different. Situations were different. The economy was different. The economy was doing very well during that time. So my parents came and they had a pathway to citizenship. I was the firstborn American in my family, so I was an American-born citizen, and therefore, at that time, the laws of the country were that I can represent my family as a what they call sponsor to legalize my parents to become residents. Therefore, then later on, after a certain amount of time, become citizens of this country. Both my parents and my sisters became citizens. And they're all citizens at this point. So, therefore, utilitarianism is something that I've learned throughout my culture and lifestyle, which essentially means that the end result, justifies the means in which we got here. So, when coming to that conclusion, I would say that I look at a situation like my parents and say, that my parents' decision to technically break the law to come to this country to give their family a better life, in my view of it, my ethical perspective was that that's acceptable. That's an acceptable solution because we are much better than we would have been if we would have stayed in the country of their origin. So we are in a better situation. We contributed to our communities. We've become productive citizens of this country. We have not broken any laws per se. I have become a contributing factor to the improvement of our society, and therefore I feel like it's a decision that was warranted. I know that some people might not agree with that, and I'm okay with that, and I respect your perspective of it. So the point of this is to understand where we stand and why we make the decisions that we do. Now, this week, we look at a concept, and in business, we do a lot of analysis. We view business not as a closed system. In other words, we need the external environment to impact us, right? So in a SWOT analysis, an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's an analysis that's done to understand the position in which we find our business. In other words, a business cannot survive without its environment, without the external environment. So I'm going to give you a quick scenario of, for example, if I wanted to start a small business in this environment, in Dalton, Georgia, and Calhoun, and Rome. And I'm doing a SWOT analysis and trying to figure out where would be the best place and what would be the best business to begin. Now, I hear a lot of people, and I see this a lot in social media and local social media in pages where people will be like, why are we starting another chicken restaurant? Why are we starting another restaurant in this area? And at some level, someone must have done an analysis, either a SWOT analysis or a pastel analysis, which is looking at the political and the socioeconomicals and the different things that occur in the environment in which that business is going into. And a SWOT analysis looks at what's the strength that I bring to the area. And that the strength and the weaknesses, the first two parts, are internal. What do I bring internally? So say I want to start a family a family center, a family entertainment place. I look around and I go, okay, what's the strengths that I bring? Well, the strengths are that I know I have a family, so I know that in this area there's not a lot to do for families, and many of you are saying, yes, this would be a great business. And then we do a weakness. What is the weakness internally? Well, what would a large majority of people be interested in, right? And some people, like in Calhoun, Georgia, there was a skating rink. Now, what's the weakness about a skating rink? Like, who goes skating now? That's part of our culture. I don't remember anyone saying, I'm going to throw a skating party, a skating rink, where people roller skated, right? People say, well, a bouncy place. I'm pretty sure there's a bouncy place in Calhoun somewhere. But how often will people do that? And everyone's like, oh, I would love something like that to happen. But here in Dalton, I noticed there's like a outdoor mini golf course. Like, what's a weakness in that? Well, you could only do it in the summer and the spring, maybe the fall, but you're going to close down when weather's bad. So that's a weakness. So we look at the internal strengths and weaknesses, and we try to figure out what are we offering to the environment in which we have, and what are some of the weaknesses we can improve on. And then we look at the opportunities externally, right? Obviously, an opportunity externally to a family entertainment place would be there's a lot of families in this area, right? There's a lot of people with children under a certain age. And when you do research, you'll discover that you'll find that out there's places or there's research that's done on what's the size of an average family, what's the income of the average family in the area, how much money do you think they have based on like the average mortgage. So all this is done. So for example, we look at, and I mentioned this last time, we look at why Target or Walmart or one of those stores open up, and people are like, why don't we have a Target in this area? Someone looked at the family income and said there's not enough money in these families as an average to go to the Walmarts or to go to a Crate and Barrel or one of those nicer places, right? There's not enough money in this area. The average salary and the average cost of a home, that's all calculated when you look at that and you go, wow, this is crazy. There's not a lot of money in the average family in this area to be able to support one of those businesses. So what's a threat externally? And the threats externally is, for example, in entertainment, there's other competition. Maybe people would go to the nearest, Chattanooga or to Kennesaw or to one of the larger cities to take their family out of their neighborhood, right? So when we look at this SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, threats, the first two, we look at what we bring to the table. And the last two, the opportunity and threats, we look at what the environment has as opportunity and threats to our business, because we need the environment to support what we bring to the table. So if I wanted to open up a taco truck, right, make the best tacos in the world, what's my strength? Maybe my strength is I will only serve the best tacos and quality ingredients, and maybe that's not being offered right in this area. Maybe someone's offering a taco, but the flavors aren't there, or the quality of meat isn't there, or the tortillas aren't handmade, or just in general the quality of it. Say for example, the selection of what ingredients they have is not there. Maybe I want to do a fried chicken, um, fried chicken, fried green tomato taco, right? Something that would be an opportunity, because we're in the South. People love fried chicken and they love fried tomatoes, and I create a fusion taco for this environment, right? So fried chicken, fried green tomato tacos, or something like fried chicken and I don't know what they call it, some type of ingredients that is popular in the South, and maybe that'll attract a new customer base, and that's the opportunity externally because I'm in the South. So think about a business in your area, or a business that you know, or a business that you'll be interested in. So create a SWOT analysis of it. You can write it down, but I'll be more intrigued when you do it in a 4 quadrants, where you put your SWOT analysis on one corner, you put weaknesses on another, opportunity and threats. Google a SWOT analysis and you'll see how many people use it in a sort of 4 quadrant space. That would be the appropriate way to present it in a business meeting. I'll accept it if you write it out, but I would rather you do it in those 4 quadrants. Once again, I apologize for any delays in my posting of this. Hopefully you get this